What's up, guys? Mr. Jones here, and we're going to go over a few smaller topics related to functions. So we're going to go over zeros, and then also talk a little bit more about domain and range. Okay. So I'm just going to introduce you to zeros here first, what those are and how we find those, either in an equation or on a graph. So I have the definition up here. It says a zero is the x value when f of x equals 0. Okay, now that contains some math terms. Okay, so let's break that down. So 0 is an x value. Okay, that's the first part. So when it asks for a 0 or find the zeros, we're wondering what the x value is. Okay, so that's the key, but it's a specific x value. Okay, it's not just any x value. It's the x value when f of x equals 0. And remember, f of x is that function notation, and we said that it means the same as y, right? So for us, and especially that's going to be helpful, like when we look at the graphs too. So it's the x value when y equals 0. That's easier to conceptualize what it is. Okay, so y equals 0 is what we're focusing on. Okay, and so when we're asked, like in these four examples, when we're asked to find the zeros of the function for each of these, what we're going to do is we're going to substitute in, if it's an equation, we're going to substitute in 0 for y, or again for f of x, same thing. Then we're going to solve for that x value, okay? That's all it is. So the math isn't actually too tricky. It's just knowing that a 0 means that the y is equal to 0, and so we're solving in that situation, okay? So if I did that for number 1, if y is equal to 0, that's what it's asking for. Find the zeros. And notice it says zeros. This really should be in like parentheses like they do, because you can have 1 0, you can have 2 zeros. Sometimes you don't have any zeros. So yeah, it's not always multiple, and it's not always just 1. Okay, so just to clarify that. So again, we're wondering when y equals 0, what's the x value there? Okay, so if I just replace this letter y with a 0, it's going to be 0 equals negative 3x plus 6. Okay, and this is now like an equation that I can solve for x, right? So I want to get x by itself down here. Okay, so if I do that, I want to get x by itself. I want to cancel out these two numbers. Hopefully you remember a little bit of how to do this, right? So you would minus 6 from both sides. You do that, and you get negative 6 equals negative 3x. And then our last step is to divide by that negative 3. Okay? So I do that, and I'm left with x equals negative 6 divided by negative 3, positive 2. Okay, so my 0 here would be 2. Okay? Or, again, that might be a little bit weird, but that my 0 is 2. That's a weird statement, okay? Basically, what we found here is like a point, okay? So basically, we found the point 2 comma 0, okay? It's basically saying when y is equal to 0, x is 2. That's what we found there, okay? So, again, that'll make more sense with graphs, because that's really kind of saying an ordered pair or a point, but that is what we found. That's what it asked for, and we got that, okay? Number 2, you see it says f of x equals negative x plus 7, okay? So same thing, I'm wondering what's the 0? So this f of x is going to change to 0. So I replace that with 0 equals negative x plus 7. And then same thing, I solve this for x, get the x by itself. So I minus 7 from both sides. Negative x on the right equals 0 minus 7. Negative 7 on the left. And then again, this negative x isn't by itself yet. That's still representing a number. This is negative 1x, is what that's really saying. So I need to divide both sides by that negative 1 to cancel that negative. And then I do that, and I'm left with x equals negative 7 divided by negative 1, positive 7. Okay? So that's the 0 of this function, okay? And again, what it's saying when x equals 7, that's saying, like if I was to graph this, we'd get a straight line, but it's saying the point that would be when y equals 0, that point would be 7 comma 0. Now for 3 and 4, we're shown these graphs, okay, and we're not really told anything else. We're not told the table or the equation or whatever, and we don't really need those for this type of when it's asking, okay. What's nice is we can find the zero of the function just by looking at the graph, okay, because think about this. If a zero is when y equals 0, think about where on the graph would y equal 0, okay. Well, my y-axis is this vertical one, but y equaling 0 means it's not going to be up or down at all, which means it's going to be right on the y-axis, okay? So basically, another word for zeros, when I'm asked to find a zero, that's another word for the x-intercept. Or where does the line that I'm looking at cross through the x-axis, okay? Because any point that is on the x-axis will have a y value of 0. For number 3, I'm wondering where's the 0 of this, okay? And so again, I'm looking for where does it cross through the x-axis, okay? And that happens right here, right at that point. And if I wonder what the coordinates of that point are, I go over -1, 2, 3, 4, -5, okay? So this would be the point -5, 0, okay? And so that means, right, that my y value is 0, like it should be, right? That's what we said, that our zeros are when y equals 0. So my 0 of this function would be, I could say x equals -5, okay? Because technically, again, the 0 is what the x value is at that spot. Or I could just saying the point as well. Now for number 4, okay, we look at this and we see that it's a curve, right? It's not a straight line. This curve is called a parabola. But so if we're wondering when does this touch the x-axis, right? If you look carefully, it actually touches it twice, right? It hits right here, then it hits again over here. It kind of loops, it touches, loops down, and comes back up, touches again. Okay, so like I said in the beginning, it is possible to have multiple zeros. Okay, so let's figure out what those are. Okay, so like I said, this is one of them, and then this is another one. Okay, so let's think, what are the coordinates of those? And so this one on the right would be the point -3, 0. Okay, and then this one would be -5, 0. So then just finishing this out, -5, 0, -3, 0. Those are my two zeros of this function. So you could say x equals -5 and x equals -3, because those are both zeros. Or, like I said, you could also list the coordinates of the point, okay?